So now you're ready to create your tesserae. I've created four layers. So I've got a blank layer on top, and that's a transparent layer. My next layer is the picture that I'm going to use. Then I have a background color, which is black, but if I wanted to change that at any point, I could use the paint bucket and change that color. And then my bottom layer is just a copy of my picture. And I just made that by right-clicking on my initial picture to duplicate my layer and say okay. Okay, I don't really need that copy, so I could say Control Z, or I could hit this little button here, the trash can, to delete the layer. So I've got my four layers. And at any point, you can just click the eye to make a layer visible or invisible. And what you're going to want to do is you want just the top two, the transparent layer and your picture right now, to be visible. If by any chance your layers are out of order, you can always click and drag them to put them in order. Whatever layer is the lighter gray, that's the layer you're working on. So we actually don't want to do anything to our original picture. You want to be working on the top transparent layer. And I think that's going to be a common mistake is you'll accidentally work on this layer. So you really want to make sure that you are clicked on this layer. So what I want to do is I want to start creating the tesserae. And I really want to be able to see closely. So I'm going to say View, Zoom in. View, zoom in. And you can use shortcuts, but I tend to use the top toolbar, zoom in. So I'm really close. And I want to start by creating the feathers. And, just find a spot in your picture that works for you, and you sort of want to center on one spot and go from there. So the first thing I want to do is I want to create the shape of the tesserae, and you want something with angles. So in the toolbar, there's something called the lasso tool. And if you and the default is sort of like the cowboy's lasso, but if you right click on it, there's a magnetic lasso and a polygon lasso. We're going to use the one that's angular. So I'm going to click on that. Okay. And what I want to do is I want to make sure I'm on the transparent layer, just double click, and I'm going to click the shape that I want for my feather or whatever it is I'm making the shape of. So I clicked, each click was a corner, and then when I was done, I connected it together. And now I want to fill it in with my paint bucket. Now I could go over to the color picker and I could try to make the right blue, but since I want it to be the exact blue it is, if I go over to the tools, there's a tool called the eyedropper, and wherever you click, it picks up that color. So if you notice, if I click on the background, the green, now that's green, okay? If I click on, the tan of the neck, it's tan. I want this blue, so I clicked in this blue, and then I take my paint bucket, and I click right here, okay? And then what I'm gonna do is I'm going to go back to my tool, and I'm going to go to the next feather. I'm going to double click to close up the shape. I'm going to grab my eyedropper to grab the color again. And then I'm going to take my paint bucket and I'm going to fill it in. Now, if you make a mistake or you don't like a shape you're doing, you can always say Edit, Undo. The shortcut is Control Z. So I'm just going through, and if I wanted to do a couple feathers in a row, it's a very similar color. I could do that. I could also just, sort of get different variations within the feather for my color. So I'm going through and I'm adding that, and I'm just continuing to work. If by any chance you don't like a shape, besides Control Undo, you could always use the eraser tool if you needed to. And as I'm creating my shapes, you may not be able to tell, but I'm actually making the mosaic shape. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to fill this one in. Okay, and if I say View, Zoom out, View, Zoom out, you can hardly tell that those are the shapes. I'm going to say Select, Deselect, get rid of the crawling ants. But if I make this layer visible and I hide this, you can see I'm already creating my shapes. So that's it. That's how you create the shapes. So you are going to just go through and create your shapes. And it does take some time, but it's not incredibly complicated. So once you know how to do it, you should be good. Just a couple quick refreshers. Zooming in and out, View, Zoom in, View, Zoom out. You also want to make sure always to be clicked in the top layer. So even when you use the eyedropper tool, it picks the color up from the color picture. It's not going to pick anything from the transparent. So you don't have to worry about switching layers. Okay, the shape, and you might want to play around with making the shapes first so that you know you can do it. But that's how you create the shapes. So really you're going to be using the eyedropper tool. as a color picker, you're going to be using the paint bucket. And you may at some point use select, deselect to get rid of the crawling ants. When you're done with a shape, when you go to make the next one, you automatically are able to see it. Okay, and toward the end of your project, you'll probably want to play around with some different colors in the background. So that is how you make your tesserae or your shapes to your mosaic.